From the PEP Radio Newsroom, this is the news blast for this hour. LGBTQ Nation is reporting that the anti-LGBTQ plus Freedom Caucus in the U.S. House has threatened to sink President Donald Trump's one big beautiful bill barely 9 days before Trump's desired July 4th deadline because it doesn't do enough to reduce the federal deficit. The House passed the bill last month by only one vote, and Freedom Caucus members say they'll vote against changes that the Senate made to the legislation. The situation has left House Speaker Mike Johnson asking the Senate to change very little, as any loss of House support could sink the bill's passage. Interestingly, caucus members' biggest issue with the bill isn't its massive cuts to Medicaid benefits and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP benefits, which will hurt their red state constituents. Nor is the caucus primarily opposed to the fact that the bill is estimated to increase the deficit by nearly $3 trillion over the next decade, due largely to the bill's huge reduction in tax revenue, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Rather, Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris, a Republican from Maryland, said via X that he would vote no because the currently proposed Senate version of the One Big Beautiful Bill weakens key House priorities. It doesn't do enough to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, yada, 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 in Medicaid. It backtracks on the Green New Scam elimination included in the House bill, etc., and it greatly increases the deficit, taking us even further from a balanced budget. How does throwing a $45 to $60 million parade in Washington, D.C. on the 14th of June help balance the budget? Just curious, Representative. Do you have any comment? In other words, Harris and his caucus feel the Senate bill doesn't do enough to eliminate former President Joe Biden's environmental policies to make more tax cuts permanent and doesn't impose further restrictions on Medicaid benefits. If the Senate tries to jam the House with this version, I won't vote present. I'll vote no, Harris added. I can vote as no as many times as it takes and for as long as it takes to do something actually big and beautiful. Harris only voted present when the bill passed the House last month. Representative Chip Roy, Republican from Texas, the Freedom Caucus's policy chair, wrote on X, rumor is Senate plans to jam the House with its weaker, unacceptable OBBB before 7-4. This is not a surprise, but it would be a mistake. The bill in its current Senate form would fail even a basic smell test. So it would smell more like Donald Trump's Depends or more like J.D. Vance's couch after he's done with it. Well, either way, I would not vote for it as it is. Roy said the Senate bill is not even close to the reduced budget plan that House Speaker Johnson promised earlier this year. Caucus member Representative Eric Burleson, the Republican from Missouri, wrote via X, the watered-down OBBB is a joke. Spending increases, delayed rollbacks of the Green New Scam, and no real Medicaid reform. If leadership tried to jam it through, I will vote no. America deserves a serious bill, not another swamp product. The swamp product is sitting in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House and controls both chambers. That's the swamp. You want to drain it? Go home. It's unclear if the bill will even be able to pass the Senate, however, as it can only afford to lose 3 votes in the Republican Party's attempt to pass the bill with a simple majority using a reconciliation process. However, some of the bill's provisions may also need to reach a 60-vote threshold to pass, meaning that 7 Democratic senators would need to support them, the Senate parliamentarian recently announced. You see, folks, bigotry from MAGA land isn't limited to just the LGBTQ plus community, or people of color, or immigrants, or non-Christians, or, well, you know. It's also thrust upon poor folks who rely on Medicaid and SNAP benefits. The U.S. Senate is more concerned about increasing and making permanent tax cuts for people who do not need them, and to hell with the poor and their Medicaid and SNAP benefits. That's the Republican way of thinking. And that's the News Blast at this hour. The Pennsylvania Equality Project is conducting its discrimination survey for 2025 through July 31st. Details are available on their website, paequality.com. Up next, we have the Meadville area weather forecast here on PEP Radio.